The indoor classroom, I'm always feeling a little confined and um, in front of an audience. Whereas when I'm in the outdoors, I'm with a group and we're moving and looking at things and sharing in a way that's just so much more natural. The dialogue and the dynamic of a group moving through a outdoor classroom is totally different than students sitting in a classroom, and it's just such a difference. It's really night and day for me.
This is the Seedfield Podcast, the show where Antiochians share their knowledge, tell their stories, and come together to win victories for humanity. I'm your host, Jasper Nighthawk, and today we're joined by Peter Palmiotto for a conversation about outdoor classrooms. What are they? What do they offer students and communities? And how can we create and cultivate them? Peter Palmiotto is the perfect person to have this conversation with, because since 2014, he's been the main faculty member in charge of Glover's Ledge. Glover's Ledge is an 80-acre outdoor classroom in the forests of western New Hampshire. Glover's Ledge is located about a 30-minute drive from the city of Keene, which is where Antioch University's main New England campus is located. And Peter is core faculty in the Department of Environmental Studies located there. Part of his role managing Glover's Ledge is that he is the director of Antioch Forests. And I'm excited to learn from Peter about this specific forest and outdoor classroom. And I also want to zoom out and think about outdoor classrooms more generally, the theory behind them, and the considerations that go into cultivating one, no matter the region or the climate. So with that intro, Peter, welcome to the Seedfield Podcast.
Thanks, Jasper, and I'm looking forward to talking about outdoor classrooms with you.
I am too. And to start our conversation, I always like to ask guests to share where we're coming to the conversation from. So anybody watching the video version of this podcast will see we are both indoors. So we're not in an outdoor classroom right now. We discussed when we were planning this, should you be at Glover's Ledge while we recorded this? And we decided that probably wouldn't be ideal for audio.
Not with minus degree temperatures outside, no.
Indeed, it is late January as we've hit record. But I also I like to disclose a little bit about who we are and what we bring to the conversation. So I can go first. We're talking about land in the United States. So I want to share, I'm recording this podcast in Los Angeles. We're doing this over the internet. And I want to say Los Angeles is the traditional homelands of the Tongva, Tataviam, and Chumash peoples. As for myself, I am a white man. I identify as cisgendered and queer. I'm not living with a physical disability, but I do experience anxiety and depression. I've talked about that a fair amount on this show, actually, and I think it's useful to share. I hope we talk a little bit about mental health and being outdoors in this conversation. Yeah, I would also disclose I have a college degree and a master's degree. I have steady housing, steady income, and I also have a 3-year-old child. So I bring that to conversations about education, is thinking about my own child's upcoming education. I'll hand it over to you, Peter.
Great. Thanks, Jasper. I'll follow your lead and identify that I'm in New Hampshire, and that's the land here, and Glover's Ledge that we're going to talk about occupies the unceded land of the Abenaki people in this region. I'm a white cisgendered male. I have a doctorate degree in ecosystem ecology. I'm a certified forester. I own a home. I'm married to an amazing, talented artist who bore two of my adult children. My 2 adult children, only have 2, who both inspire me every day.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Peter. And before we get to outdoor classrooms, how did you come to work in forestry and environmental studies?
My brother was a forester, for one, so I guess I followed in his footsteps and went to college to be in forestry and just love being in the outdoors all the time. It's where I felt um, most relaxed, and always something new was occurring in forests when I went out there. Whether it's the mountains of the Northeast and the Adirondacks or the mountains of Southeast Asia where I did my graduate studies. Just love being outside, and so forestry and environmental studies is something I've always, it's just been part of who I am, I guess.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I feel like that kind of ties in to the idea of studying outdoors. So can you define for us what does an outdoor classroom mean to you?
I really love that question because um, learning outdoors just so resonates with what I do and how I teach. And if we're going to define what an outdoor classroom is, sort of different than and sort of any outdoor space like a public park, an outdoor classroom is a place where there are natural communities that you can learn about and elements within that place that create opportunities for learning. And those kind of elements are like specific places where students can gather, or people can gather, shelters, um, again, diverse habitats, and in many places, interpretation information. Um, I just, they're special places that create opportunities for learning.
Thank you for that definition. And I appreciate you specifying how it's different from a public park. I feel like as we're defining it or trying to understand what outdoor classrooms are, it would be really helpful for us to look closely at a specific one. So tell us about Glover's Ledge. You have been helping create it, build out its infrastructure since 2014. Um, yeah, describe the this outdoor classroom to us, please.
Glover's Ledge, pretty special place in that numerous cohorts of graduate students and community members have used the property, but it's an 80-acre property. Three-quarters of it is forested with a very interesting vernal pool complex and pond. Um, it's got fields in terms of meadows that we've established and cultivate and mow. And some of those elements I described to you for learning that we created is like a pavilion, um, interpretive trails, half mile ADA compliant trail, all projects that we developed on the property since we acquired it in 2014.
That's great. And so vernal pools, those are like pools that fill up during the springtime but are empty during the fall. Is that right?
Vernal pools are um, wetlands, yes, that don't have fish in them. That's one of the
Okay.
markers. And so they're amazing places for breeding amphibians and spring peepers in the Northeast, where they just are screaming in the early spring and while they're breeding. And
Sorry, what are spring peepers?
spring peepers are little tiny frogs that have an amazing chorus that really, if you're really close, is rather deafening but beautiful.
That's great. So in does that also like draw in a ton of different birds and other migrating animals?
Um, Certainly, birds would use it for bathing and drinking, and insect foraging. Um, Frogs, salamanders, amphibians. Fairy shrimp is an indicator of a vernal pool. And in our work at Glover's Ledge with camera trapping and one of the most recent projects, one of my students have captured amazing wildlife using the vernal pools, from black bear to bobcats to um, all all the small mammals, and just pretty amazing footage. Yeah.
That's so cool. And it seems like one of the benefits of having this this forest for the last 12 years that you have been studying is that there have been all of these different projects to understand its hydrology and geology, its wildlife, its bird life, its um, all of these different roles. Can you talk a little bit about how, like, the role that it plays in the environmental studies graduate program?
Certainly, the base, I would say, is a place to hold classes, and I've run many of my classes there. Um, Wildlife and forest management class, New England flora class, our community ecology class. So the class lessons when we're based at Glover's Ledge allows us to be out in the environment in which we're studying, the students are learning about, um, provide real hands-on experiential learning, as I'll define it, where we can talk about the habitat and the relationships because they can see all the players right there. And yeah, it's just great for that. Um, and then all the projects that we have ongoing there allows us to talk much more about the big picture, the global issues, whether it's climate change or forest management or wildlife habitat. Um, we see the elements, we talk about them in person, and at least from my perspective as an instructor, that's much more tangible, and therefore it the learning is a little deeper.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about, like, the difference that you see in students and maybe in your own self between teaching in a traditional classroom and teaching in an outdoor classroom?
Yeah, that's um, it's kind of easy for me because the indoor classroom, I'm always feeling a little confined and um, in front of an audience. Whereas when I'm
Mm.
in the outdoors, I'm with a group and we're moving and looking at things and sharing in a way that's just so much more natural. And the dialogue and the dynamic of a group moving through a outdoor classroom is totally different than students sitting in a classroom. And it's just such a difference. It's really night and day for me.
Yeah, what is that dynamic? Like, what are some of the things that you're able to do in an outdoor classroom that just wouldn't be possible if you were inside?
Well, I think about being inside, and you break a classroom lesson into different discussions. I'm not going to say lectures because we rarely sort of lecture here at Antioch, but um, different lectures, different lessons, and you move from one to the other. Maybe you break out into groups, and you do breakout sessions. But in an outdoor classroom, you're doing similar type structure, but moving from one point to the other, you're basically enabling, allowing, supporting informal discussion amongst the students as we move from one place to the other. There's lots of conversation, reflection on what was just said, or just general connections between students that they don't have in a formal classroom. And I just feel that it's just a more total enriching environment to learn in because of those
Yeah.
relationships, those connections that student make throughout the whole class period.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Like, I also think when I have been in classrooms, like, I've had experiences of, as both a student and a teacher, like taking a field trip or doing a lesson just out on the school grounds. And it seems like when it's just the students in the classroom, it's often hard to have the students interact with each other in a natural way. I think in my experience, when we're outside, there is a way that, especially when we're moving through a space, or walking, there's a way that you're soothed by the outdoors, but you're also like your attention can fall upon things, or you can naturally end up walking by somebody who you might not otherwise talk to and strike up a conversation with them. It's just like a more organic social space than a classroom with a bunch of chairs in front of desks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to turn and talk a little bit about the work of building outdoor classrooms and really cultivating them, like helping them grow into really meaningful spaces that affect generations of students and also the broader community. So can you walk us through some of the infrastructure that you have added over the last decade plus on Glover's Ledge and how that has transformed your ability to use this outdoor classroom?
Certainly. And we acquired the property in 2014, a donation from a former student, and that student, having taken the class, basically said, I think this property will better serve Antioch and the community in your hands than his." So immediately we imagined the vision, the plan as an outdoor classroom. Um, so we we shut down some trails that there was quite a network of trails. We made them simpler and easier to maintain. We built a pavilion. It was a community event to build it. Again, a place to gather, a place to be outside, to be covered from sun and rain, um, with a shed and barbecue grills so that we could have a social events, which we do regularly. That both our department, other departments, and all of the New England campus use.
Yeah, that seems like also like a focal point. It's useful to say, "Meet me at the pavilion," or
Yeah,
"We'll go out and
yeah,
we'll start at the pavilion," or it just kind of like focuses the energy.
indeed, indeed. Um, Later in 2018, we acquired the front 4 acres of the property and a more traditional building. So that was another anchor for us. And then the development of the ADA trail added a really important element for um, classroom learning, in that we had all those interpretive sites in our classes. We also, when we break out in groups, or we do what's it called, um, pair shares. You go for a walk with
Mm,
someone and talk about something. A half-mile
yeah.
trail is a pretty good stretch to have a good opportunity for conversation. Um, the vernal pool complex, the forest habitats, has allowed students to do tangible forest management plans, forest health assessments, studying vernal pools, looking at forest carbon, and all of those elements allows an instructor to talk about those global topics, such as climate change, but such as species diversity and conservation. So again, and it's an outdoor classroom where there are opportunities for learning, and the students see those opportunities, and the faculty with their pretty amazing skills.
Yeah, hearing you describe that, I was thinking other people listening to this may be thinking about setting up outdoor classrooms for their own university or their community, maybe for even a grade school or high school. And I was thinking it sounds like there are a couple different levels of intervention that you have done to make this a really productive space for students. Are there any other like levels that I'm missing? Like maybe there's also a community level of having those partnerships or that um yeah, am I capturing some of these considerations?
Yeah, indeed, indeed. And you talked about the community element, and we're actively working to connect with the high school. Um, I have an advisory board. Those individuals help us connect with the community, and whether it's the local elementary school where or the local Boy Scout troop. It's those partners, those community members that, you know, just expands the value of the property and its use when we invite them in, and the enthusiasm for for the young folks. I mean, we work. Our programs are masters and PhDs in environmental studies, but when we work with the high school and the middle school and younger um, children, there's a lot of fun energy associated with those outings.
Yeah, that sounds so fun. And I know when I was a kid in grammar school, middle school, high school, like those days when you got loaded onto a bus and you actually got to go somewhere and be out in the world were always so wonderful. And so having another spot where teachers can take their kids is great.
You know, we run field studies trips, always have as part of our programs, and when we have alumni and they come back, those are the experiences they talk about. We use Glover's Ledge as a place where we have training modules and, you know, picnic to orient and start the school year. So it's hopefully a community building experience for the students. Even one day, uh, our students know Glover's Ledge from the beginning, and we have work parties. They come out and help us with trails or whatever we're doing.
Yeah, it kind of belongs to the students as much as to the university and the wider community. Um, yeah, well, we're starting to wrap up, but I wanted to talk about your plans and dreams for the future of Glover's Ledge. So I know that you recently got a $500,000 donation to set up a scholarship that's actually in your name, that is associated with supporting and developing Glover's Ledge. Can you tell us a little bit about the Peter Palmiotto Fund?
Yeah, the Peter Palmiotto Conservation Fund is intended to support Glover's Ledge into the future, with half the funds going directly to graduate students, graduate student fellowship that will help students be forest managers, property managers, help me maintain the property, and the other half is for projects on the property. And so, and we're looking to improve the property by putting in more pollinator fields, looking to expand the facilities a little bit, hopefully create some housing, temporary housing that would enable the property to become study away or housing for intensives. And with the funding, I hope to create a position that will actually be more active, proactive in reaching out and going to schools and then inviting schools to come to the property. So those resources will really enable us to have a much greater impact than we have in the last decade that we've had the property, I think.
And when you and I met up to kind of talk about what we might talk about here, I remember you were so excited about, like, maybe we will have flush toilets.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's true. It's just like, expanding the facilities to include flush toilets would be really wonderful. As I mentioned, we have a composting toilet now and we rent a porta potty, but it's just not as conducive to the basic comforts that most people are used to. And
yeah,
um,
yeah, I appreciate the way that this project, it's unlike, a virtual Zoom meeting. It's very practical and grounded. It's like, oh, will people with in wheelchairs or using walkers be able to get to the pavilion? Will is Are there flush toilets? Is there a place where when it's raining you can stay out of the rain? Like, the practicality of that has a certain grounded quality that just uh feels like a wonderful part of studying, actually. So, as my final question, I wanted to ask if there was a practice or a part of your work or your students' work at Glover's Ledge that you think other people could take and incorporate into their own daily lives?
I would I would share that when I go to Glover's Ledge and I'm off alone or in any place in the woods really, and to feel grounded, I do this little exercise that anybody can do, particularly when you're in a natural environment, and that is to think about your different senses. So take a minute to look around and identify everything you can see, identifying the sense of trees, squirrels, birds. Use your visual senses, and then shift to your auditory senses. Take a minute to really focus on what you can hear, and then move on to what you can feel, and that is touch, whether it's the cold, the warmth, the wind on your face, a tree, a rock, a leaf. You do that, and you then take it all in. And in that sort of 5 minutes of just testing and heightening all your senses individually and then collectively, you end up feeling and being in a different place prior to when you started to do that little exercise. And with that, I think you can feel the forest, the natural environment better than when you walked into it. And of course, always when I'm doing something like that, and I touch a tree, I often hug a tree, so just gives you a whole different perspective. And in terms of mental health, I think those are the kind of things that are really important.
That's a beautiful invitation, Peter. Thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you for coming on the Seed Field podcast and sharing all of this.
You're welcome. Thanks for the conversation. I do appreciate you.